Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Is it morning or afternoon? Afternoon. Okay, my name is Teguan. I'm the Desktop Manager of Toppan Ecquaria. I've been in the IT industry for more than 20 plus years. Not as old as Tom Cruise, maybe. So 20 plus years is a long year, and I'm glad to see a few of our friends here in front. Thanks for coming. Okay, for this 20 plus year, I've been mostly involved in the system and infra portion. In fact, towards my IT career, mostly I deal with that. So I've been in Toppan career for the past 3 years. And for us, we really deal with the system and in the e-government sector. So today I'm going to share a bit with you more about the cloud native adoption. So the agenda will be why cloud, why digital, cloud native benefits, the cloud native features, cloud operations. So I'm not going to go very in depth to see what are the components, how you go about doing it, what to implement to become a cloud native. So I'm just going to go over a general overview and what should we do and your approach to being a cloud native system. So for start, why cloud and why digital? So maybe I take a poll here. Any of you still have your own system housing in GDC where you buy your own server, you still have your own rack, your own SAN storage? Show the hand here, or all move to cloud already? Or are you still having your system in a so-called traditional manner, a monolithic client web server database format? Maybe. So in fact, if you are actually, you are not alone. In fact, some and many of our organization and customer, they do still have their so-called their system hosting in GDC in their own premise data center. They still have their own rack and own server, and they are the FM maintaining the servers. So we still see them out there. So we ask them, why aren't you going to move all these things to the cloud and move to the more cloud native environment? So the question to them and the answer back to them is, if it works, don't touch it. So why should I move it? So why if it's working, I'm not going to move. So maybe to that question of why move, our answers to them is actually the keyword called digital transformation. So actually not too long ago, in fact, a few years ago, we have our own infra still in the traditional manner, still in hosted in the hardware. So now we are actually, the time was in the pre-cloud era, so we're actually moving our IT workload to the cloud era today. So resulting in the cloud-enabled era. So today, I think our mindset must tune to this digital transformation mindset that we got to stop implementing traditional infrastructure and start to move towards the cloud native era. So you ask me, so how do I go about doing this digital transformation? So if you ask me, if I migrate my workload from on-prem to the cloud, does it consider a cloud native solution ready? So the question is, are you going to do a lift and shift, going to move existing what you have from your on-prem or to the cloud? Are you going to set up your own monolithic so-called server, file server and databases? Or if I start using a bit of cloud native product like RDS, do I consider it as a cloud native solution? So think about it. If you are thinking of doing that, and actually a lot of organizations are doing that. So if you are doing that, if you're actually just a rehosting and a so-called cloud-enabled solution, so you're not moving towards a cloud-native environment. So what is really considered a cloud-native environment? If you Google it, there are plenty of definition, plenty of answers to you. So maybe I read out some to you here. So cloud-native architecture and technologies are an approach to modern designing, constructing, operating workload that are built in the cloud, take full advantage of the cloud computing model. They treat the underlying structure as disposable, repeatable, vision in minutes, resize, scale, destroy, and on demand and ability to roll back. So it's quite a mouthful and quite a lot of definition. But if you break it down easily to three keywords, actually cloud native offers speed, agility, and availability. So if you ask me, in fact, if I move my workload to the cloud, it's already offering speed, agility, availability. So actually cloud native will take you a step further and leverage more and use so-called leverage and take more advantage of this speed agility ability on top of what clouds have offered to you. So talking about that, if we're going to move cloud native, so you may ask me, so if I move my workload to cloud and going cloud native, what are the benefits? Why is it gaining importance? So why must I design my system to be cloud native? Maybe I will give you some illustration here. So, okay, these are purely for illustration. So imagine you're working one whole week, very shag already. So finally it's Friday and you're going to watch Netflix. So you go back home, chill down, have some beer and popcorn, you on your TV to watch Netflix. So you turn on Netflix, Stranger Things, season 3, now on season 4, you got no time to catch up. So you start to press play, and you waited, and you waited, and you waited, the thing don't play. Finally a message shows, Netflix is under maintenance. The video cannot be played now, please check back later. So what will be your reaction when you want to watch Netflix and you want to catch up with the Stranger Things? So this can't be actually happening. So another scenario, maybe Hill, okay, he and his wife looking to buy a second property. Okay, so shortlisted a few condo. I want to invest. So looking around, and he's busy with his agile and scrum work, so he got no time to read the news. And then end of the day, after work, he went home. He read the news. He say, "Oh, there's some cooling measure in Singapore, so some stamp duty rate got to increase." So as Kill read the news further, say, "Okay, it's a PR. So what's going to happen?" So for PR, there will be a so-called a 15% to 25% increase the stamp duty. So also the debt threshold also have been tightened. So means Kill cannot borrow more to buy his second property. So as you read further and further, you know, Singapore government like to put cooling measure last minute. So it's in effect from today or tonight. Then it's going to be implemented. So Kill is very kanchiong now. So he discussed with his wife. Hey, we have shortlisted the three condo. Maybe one of them we should go ahead. So he called his agent and say, okay, I think we'll decide to buy. So the agent say, okay, can you transfer me and you transfer the deposit to me, that particular $1,000. So we'll secure the deal for you. So now it's about 10 plus. So we discuss with wife, okay, and let's do it. He's launched a banking app and it says the system maintenance from 10 to 12 to 2 a.m. So K only has one bank account, the same account as his wife. So he's not able to transfer the money to the agent and he's not able to make this deal. And he's lost out and purchasing his beautiful second home due to this. So these are some example and illustration of why cloud native is gaining importance. So you see, we are moving to this generation, maybe not me, maybe the younger generation, where we are expecting actually releases, updates, and are done without downtime. So there's a need to deploy your application, your services, and subsequent changes and patch without disrupting user experience. So I think the keyword here is user experience. So we don't see TikTok having downtime to launch new feature. We don't see Instagram need to bring down for system patching. We don't see Netflix under maintenance, so you cannot watch season 3, season 4. So you don't see Facebook say I need to roll out some of the new 360 feature or whatever. But I need to down Facebook for 4 hours. Nobody can access Facebook. So we don't really see that. They just push out the updates seamlessly. So that's why we should start to move to this cloud native era and take advantage of the full cloud computing power to do all these things. So cloud native is actually the new normal now, where we are actually not expecting to have all this disruption and user experience. So if it does, it's usually a outage. So if you have Facebook going down, I think you will see a lot of feeds on Instagram and then on other telling that Facebook is down the whole world. So if you ask me, if I want to go to cloud native, what are the ways to do so? So maybe in summary, I will give you 3 words, maybe to rethink, re-architect, and re-platform. So what does these three words mean? Rethink, re-architect, re-platform. So rethink. Maybe you rethink your approach to your design. For existing application that you're going to move to your cloud, are you going to do a lift and shift and keeping your existing monolithic infrastructure? So for new implementation, are you going to do a monolithic, or you're going to break down your apps into microservices and roll out the microservices? And for those, the project has been around for a few years, they're going to do a so-called tech refresh or something. So are you going to consider just upgrading the component, or are you consider breaking down your so-called application to microservices and take advantage of the cloud native products? So for project implementation, are you going to do a traditional waterfall or versus the agile? So you adopt for services practices, like you're going to use your Ship-Heads platform to deliver your service, your apps. We also have our Toppan Ecquaria DevSecOps stacks, one of our product, which is the CI/CD product to do the delivery for you. And also for your cloud, your maintenance, are you going to do a traditional ATFM versus a day two cloud ops kind of way of doing things? So how does this impact? So we think, so like I mentioned, your agile practices, so it's having a small team member working or individual project, then your project can roll out further. So as your project roll out further, your application team can deliver your services, and you should use or make use of the CI/CD to quickly deliver and introduction your deployment frequently to your system. So re-architect, the next word. Are you going to redesign your monolithic services application to microservices? So microservices are like the lightweight deployment cycle consists of shorter time to build and test. So when you have a new rollout, your app team can build microservices and it can be containerized and it can be run on the cloud native platform. So lastly, re-platform. Are you going to use immutable infrastructure? So immutable infrastructure are the structure that is consistent, is disposable, is repeatable, can be provisioned quickly. So new changes of infrastructure are actually scaled up as a new instance, and you can use things like infra as code, Terraform, and CloudFormation to do this, to roll out and update your infrastructure, which I will show a bit later on. So using our cloud native orchestration platform, so this keyword may not be foreign to you, like Amazon Kubernetes services, your Azure Kubernetes services. So these are actually cloud orchestration platform that we can make use of to run your cloud microservices and run your containers. So having said all that, what are some of the features that we can expect from implementing a cloud native environment? So one of them is auto scaling. Okay, so application services and infrastructure can be auto scaled on request, on demand, and on event driven. So you may ask me, auto scale is a cloud feature. It's not really a cloud native feature. Even monolithic application can be auto scale. So I can have my VM, my tightly coupled environment. So if I want to auto scale, I can scale an entire VM. I can have 2 web server, 3 web server, 4 app server example. So that's true. But if your application are tightly coupled, so when you auto scale your services, you're actually scaling up those services that you know not needed also. So example, you have 4 applications, there's 2 is not really in demand, but the 3rd application and 4th application is in demand. So you only want to scale up those services that are actually in demand, and you do not want to scale up those services that is not in use. So by having auto scaling, your infrastructure should also can be automatically scale to actually meet the demand on the microservices that you deploy. So what does this mean? Why do we want to and use auto scaling for this thing? I think if you see the logo here, is to bring your running cost down. So many a times when we do sizing for a project, example, we will size like 2 web server, 2 app server for a monolithic. So we actually tends to oversize. So example, in fact, my app may not need so much power, but we know Singaporean kiasu ma. So we kiasu say, hey, what if one day the transaction very high, what happen? So in fact, maybe your VM only need two CPU and 8 GB RAM, but your size of 4 CPU and 16, and you've been running this, and you've been maybe running a load of 15 or 20%, and the 80% are not in use. So the purpose of having auto scale actually is to so-called cut down your operation cost, your running cost, so that when you don't need the services and your hardware don't scale up accordingly, so you only use whatever you need, and you will scale on demand, and not running effortlessly somewhere, and then you're just burning your money away. So next, rolling update. Maybe I'll give an example here. Why rolling update is important. So I think to see the keyword here is no downtime. So application services and infrastructure downtime actually can be zeroized using rolling updates. So example here will be like EKS app cluster. We have your so-called your worker node here, and you have some microservices running on your node. So imagine that you receive a notification that actually these are maybe running on Amazon Linux too, so there's a 0-day critical patch that needs to be done. So you inform your operations team and say, hey, this is critical, got to be done within 24 hours. So what your FM or your cloud operation team can do is they actually can patch the so-called the machine image, which is the image that's running the worker node here. And using infra as code, like it was CloudFormation, you can actually create a new stack and then update the stack. Say, okay, the next update I want to do is to launch a new stack with this new AMI that's being patched. So the cloud operation team can actually go ahead and prepare all this in advance. And we're rolling update and using the auto scaling feature, and with the patch AMI already in place in your template, so the cloud operation team actually can do a execute and do a update. So if you have existing node running your so-called your pods and microservices here, so you can actually use the cloud feature like your Kubernetes auto scaler to launch a new worker node with a new image that's being patched. And with pod scheduling, actually you can do the so-called the pods to be launched on the new AMI. So you will have an environment actually being patched and with the new pods running here. So you can keep both at the same time, and then you can decommission the old one, or you can run both at the same time for time being. In case there's any problem, I can do a quick rollback easily. So this is some features of rolling updates that can be used, especially in a cloud native environment. So in fact, I share with you one example of our customer that we are using this so-called the Kubernetes and running a pod on the EKS here. So we actually do not really schedule midnight downtime to do patching and do update. So we still request for a downtime. So we can actually do a rolling update at 6 PM. And sometimes it can be done with a minimized downtime that the user don't even experience and they don't even know that the system has already been patched. So what does that mean to people like people like you? So in fact, if we do patching at midnight, sometimes we need the user to test the system. So if we patch 12 AM to 4 AM, so in fact sometimes we got to bother people like Una, Anon, say, hey, can you log in and test the system because we cannot test the system on the end. So nobody like to work midnight, and nobody like to do this kind of task at the wee hour. Yep. So another approach to cloud native benefits will be a blue-green deployment. Okay, so what does it mean by a blue-green environment? That means you provision the identical green environment using your infra as code, your Terraform, your CloudFormation. So your green environment may be a newly patched system with a new services being running. So you can actually call it like example demo, example.green.com. So you can have your set of the user, your own maybe your GovTech user to come in, app user to come in and test the system. So they can do canary testing on the demo.green, and once it's okay, you can actually drop the blue environment, the existing environment, and then swing it over to the mainstream user, and the users will start to use the new environment. So these are like immutable infrastructure. That means once it's being provisioned, you tear away the old one. So you start using the new one. So it's not like an in-place update where you keep patching and patching the old system. So this one the advantage with using blue-green deployment, so you can have no downtime. Okay. So having said all this, so how does this impact your cloud operations? So by moving your workload to the cloud, actually you already gain an upper advantage that you can actually make use of very cloud native monitoring services like your CloudWatch, your widgets to monitor your infrastructure. So you can have dashboard like this example. So I think many of you may be familiar. Maybe yeah, is quite common here. Then you can actually monitor your resources. So you can also set your monitoring and your alert notifications. So if anything goes down or anything happen, you can be notified. Secondly, I think your application deployment, maybe this kind of form seems very familiar to you all. So every time you want to do a deployment, you need to fill certain form. Okay. So the form will have where to deploy. Is it a web server, database server, report server, file server? What to deploy? Maybe our team will pass you certain file to deploy. When to deploy? Tonight at 6 p.m., 9 a.m., 9 p.m. And how to deploy? So there will be a lengthy steps. Step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. Remove this file, copy this file, move this file here. So a lot of lengthy steps. And then in case of problem, how to roll back. So many a time when we do this, we hit the problem where ATFM will call us and say, hey, this step is not correct. I cannot do anymore. So this command is wrong. I cannot type the command. It doesn't execute. So this will cause a bit of inconvenience. And also, it's a very lengthy process, a lot of approval. And it's not a so-called efficient way of doing things. So actually we should prioritize and digitize your software delivery with your CI/CD. So you should use a so-called CI/CD pipeline to do the deployment, whether it's ship ahead or Ecquaria stacks here. Yep. So this should be done in a seamless way where actually you can push down your apps and update your app simpler. Just now I think Ming Xiong talked about how to update our app. So it can be done in this kind of process also using CI/CD. Lastly, change the way of patch management. So as I mentioned, you can use CI/CD for your application patch releases, your updates. So you can use rolling updates and blue-green deployment for your operation infrastructure workload, like what I mentioned earlier on. So in every system, there's bound to be some non-critical server, like your console server, your repo server, your WSAS server. So all these are non-critical server. Actually, this can be done during office hour, and you don't need a 12 midnight to down this server, because even these servers are being brought down. There's no impact to your operations. So mainly we also want to avoid weekend and midnight patching, and we don't want to disturb also our end user to come in the middle of the night to do patching, testing. So having said all that, maybe I will give a summary of what is actually like cloud enabled versus a cloud native design. So maybe I'll break down into a few areas. So for your consideration, when next time you want to do a migration or you want to do a tech refresh. So firstly, architecture design. So cloud enabled is more like a lift and shift. So they were once typically running a traditional data center, but they've been retrofitted. So it remarketed as a cloud enabled solution. So cloud native is a re-architecture. So you rethink, the keyword rethink. How are you going to break down your application? Are you going to reconstruct it from scratch? So to harness the power of cloud computing services like AWS or Azure. So for cloud enabled, your application will likely be tightly integrated, all packed into one. That means if you want to do an upgrade, you got to bring down the entire stack and then do a relaunch again. But for cloud native, it's likely to be loosely coupled, like running microservices. So software for cloud enabled, you'll be more like running and installing your middleware on the VM, like your SQL, your Apache, your file server, and any other server. So for cloud native, it's more like microservices in container format. So cloud enabled, can you use CI/CD? Actually, maybe yes. But in doing so, you're actually upgrading the entire stack and push out the entire stack instead of pushing out microservices or pushing update only to the services that need to be upgraded. So next, deployment, zeroize downtime. So cloud enable, are you able to do a zeroized downtime deployment? Likely not. So many a time, I think we got to send out notice and say certain day, from 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. we to bring down the system, because it's likely in place deployment, in place patching, where you patch on top of the existing infrastructure. We don't change the infrastructure or the underlying infra below, like your VM. So we patch on top of it. So for cloud native, we likely to practice the rolling update or booking deployment, where we actually replace the infrastructure with an updated one. And then you can miniaturize the downtime using that. So stateful and stateless. So cloud enable is likely not a stateless format. So cloud native, likely yes, because you don't you will tear down and rebuild your infrastructure, so it is likely to be stateless. So auto scaling, cloud enable possible, like what I mentioned. You can actually also scale your entire VM to suit your needs. But likely when you scale up, you scale the entire stack regardless of whether the services that's in demand or not in demand. So for cloud native, actually you can scale up the services that actually more in demand. So maximum usage of cloud computing services. So cloud enabled are mostly like monolithic, running on cloud resources. But cloud native is more apps running a cloud native platform offered by the cloud, like your Kubernetes services. So serverless, cloud enabled unlikely to use any serverless product. But cloud native, you may use serverless product like your AWS Lambda function, your Fargate, or your Azure functions. So you're likely to use all this. So typically your cloud enabled design may look something like this: traditional web server, app server, report server, and a database server. Where your cloud native will be like more like maybe a EKS cluster running your web services, or Azure EKS cluster, and then all running microservices that can be scaled up and down on demand. So having said all that, the next time when you want to do a tech refresh, or you want to do a relocation or migration from your on-prem to the cloud, so are you going to go for cloud enabled or cloud native? So we can help. Okay. So for Toppan Ecquaria, so maybe for project delivery from day 0 to day 2. So day 0 is the initial stage, and day 1 is execution stage. Day 2 is the so-called the operation stage. So from initialization, project delivery team, experienced Scrum Master like Kale can help you plan your project. So our experienced cloud architect, they are not here today, maybe 1 or 2. So will be a selling for them. So their experience, I think they really help some of our customer here doing some of the cloud native design. And my DevSecOps team, so our engineer can actually help to implement the cloud native solution. And my cloud ops teams can also help to do the monitoring and the day 2 op for closure to the project and to the maintenance stage here. Okay. I think lastly, like what Min Xiong said, our product are already cloud native. So our Ecquaria platform GP, our EIC, our so-called DevSecOps stack, our CIC pipeline here. And I think we can help you jumpstart your cloud native journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Egon. That was really insightful indeed on what cloud native is all about. Okay, so move to the next slide. So I think all of you should be quite familiar now in using Pigeonhole to send us the questions. I've already see some questions already come streaming in. So take one. Okay, so we're ready to take on some of these challenging questions. Okay, the first one, the COTS versus bespoke versus hybrid. Don't really quite understand what the question is asking. Who asked these questions? And would you mind clarifying what you're asking for, or you want to maybe rephrase your question a little bit so that it's you're clearer? Are you looking at like cost comparison or the technical difficulty in between chords or bespoke or something like that. That may be may be helpful. Or is that question phrase on the context behind it? Is it something to do with the cloud? Yeah, maybe we can move on to the next one.
Yep.
Yeah. How do I budget for an auto scaling system? Okay, cost question.
Good question.
Again. You have some insight on that?
Okay, maybe from experience from one of the project, example for this app services, we are expecting maybe on a normal mode, 25 or 30 pods to be run. So this can be run if a HA system maybe on 2 nodes. So if there's a demand, we expect it to run maybe 3 nodes. So usually if we do a budgeting, we will tell the agency that we'll budget for 3 nodes or even 4 nodes in case of demand. So the two nodes are the minimum cost that to run this application for HA purpose. Yeah. So does it answer your question?
Yeah, so we'll give you some estimate to begin with, and then based on your transaction volume, how much you think we will scale to, and then from there we can actually do some budget estimates.
So can we limit the number of nodes that autoscaler can scale to? Yes, it can be done inside the so-called when you're doing the launch template. So we can actually put minimum 2, maximum 4, or minimum 1 for UAT environment and maximum. Yeah, you can set the number.
Okay, next question. The general impression is that the cloud operation is a black box. This one you should know quite well. It's a challenge to expedite the technical resolution clarification, the absence of warm body to escalate. What can you do about it? Okay, I think the question more like cloud operation is more a black box. And I guess it's more difficult to see what is being done. Is there a way to address this issue?
Actually, not necessary. I mean, in fact, my team, when they're doing call operations, we usually will come up with a checklist after knowing the system for a while. I mean, this checklist may expand or reduce. So it's not a black box. So our engineer actually have certain checklists to follow, to certain checks to be done, and maybe, in fact, even when we do rolling update, we still need to request for downtime. So that's to protect agency and ourselves also lah. Yep. So I will not say really cooperation is a black box lah. Yep.
Okay. It's also challenging to expedite some of the technical. So sorry, what's it? So there were some challenges to expediting some of the technical resolution. Yeah, in the absence of a warm body.
Absence of a warm body means.
But we do have, okay. I mean, Technicon runs a DevSecOps team, so we do have a team of engineers, DevOps engineers that's actually maintaining the system for our customers. So there's actually somebody looking at it. So you would be. It's not like it's nobody running and monitoring it. Okay, shall we move on to the next question? Understood that cloud native will bring down the cost in the long run, but what is the difference in cost implications at the implementation stage?
So in fact, actually, the cost implication doesn't differ much from how you implement a so-called monolithic system also. Yep. So you also need to size for if you're running like EKS nodes, you need to size for your compute, you need to size for the number of Fargate profile you want to run. And there are also underlying some of the infrastructure that I mentioned, the console server, all this got to be sized in. So in fact, during the implementation stage, it may not have a difference, but during the running stage, like what I mentioned, if you're using auto scaling, all this, you will save in the long run because you may not need to run over provision nodes that's doing nothing and 80% running free at the time. So implementation stage, maybe about the same, but in the running cost, in the long run, you will have a lot of differences. Yep.
Next question is, how do you manage a rolling deployment of or blue-green for relational database schema change?
I know I answer. Okay, let me hello.
Sorry, just to address this question. Okay, so far that's still a challenge. Just typically, no, you only have one database, so you can't spin off another database to really do a blue-green approach. But one way to actually address this is actually using our microservice architecture. Typically, we actually do not have one big database anymore. So every microservice actually will have an isolated DB. So that we actually, even at the DB level, we try to decouple the into a smaller DB. So with that approach, we may still be able to have a blue-green approach by replicating the DB and then update the DB and so on. So that it doesn't affect the other services that's not affected by this particular service that you are looking at doing a blue-green deployment or rolling updates. Okay?
All right. Thanks, Wong Kiam. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. In your opinion, does agency has a say in tech refresh, or that largely influenced or decided by GovTech on site? So does agency has a say in the tech refresh, or whether, I suppose, when or whether to do a tech refresh, or is it largely decided by GovTech on site? Does it make sense to engage on site GovTech team instead of the agency user?
So if I get this question correctly, does it mean that when you want to do a tech refresh, who has the most say? Is it the GovTech user or the agency?
Yeah, I think it's something along that line. Yeah.
So I believe the agency is the system owner, right? So I think the agency will have the upper say because they are the owner. So they should have a more authority of how they want to do their system. So GovTech side maybe coming in more on maybe the security portion or certain component they want to bring in to the system, like maybe your ABLR, your VMS, something that's new that to be in place. Yep.
Okay. I suppose it depends also on the situation. Like if your software stack is really very old or outdated, then you may really need to move because some of the outdated software may not have the necessary security patches. So at the end of it, so you may have to move. So it may not be your say, no, the GovTech say, but there's really a genuine need to move. So other than that, if there's no immediate timeline for you to move, then it's something that I suppose you can discuss and decide when is the best time to move and do a tech refresh. So can you elaborate more on the tech dev ops stack? You want to weigh in on this?
Maybe I'll leave it to the product team to answer this later.
So our DevSecOps.
Okay. Hello. Yeah. Okay. Just to explain a bit more on the DevSecOps stack that we're talking about. Okay, I've been using Shoot for a while, so I know what Shoot is offering. But before Shoot offer is there by GovTech, we already start to build our DevSecOps stack that consists of the CI and CD aspect, both area. So CI we talk about so-called the source code repository. So we are using some library, a Git repository for your source code control. And then from there, we're having a pipeline tools for you to actually create your build pipeline. At the same time, we actually plug in those security static code analysis, those doing penetration tests and so on, some of the security aspect. So all the equivalent features that you found in Shoot and Head pipeline are all provided also. So finally, of course, these are still doing the so-called CI part. And then finally, the part that actually do the deployment to your UAT environment, to your production environment, the CD part, a continuous deployment part, is also part of our DevSecOps stack. So I mean, in a high level perspective, it's similar to what you are seeing in Shoot and Heads. Okay, of course, the difference is that Shoot and Heads is provided, managed by GovTech. You know, but if you prefer to have your own stack running in your own setup, in your own cloud environment or in your on-prem, yes, we can do that. But you can't move straight ahead to your own setup. You're probably also constrained by the whatever rule or guideline or policy imposed by straight aheads versus your having our own stack, which is more flexible and so on. Okay, but if you're really interested, we can have a separate session together with the product team that give you more specific details. Okay?
Okay, so thanks, Wen Kiang. So we do have customers using our DevSecOps stack, yeah, again for their own reasons. Okay, so
Last question. Yeah. So which government agency use your cloud services? I see one of my customer here. Okay, NDI. Okay. So maybe to share a bit, recently there's a lot of onboarding to tech pass and ship and seats. So actually my cloud ops team is actually managing this. So when you face issue with tech pass and face issue with your seat when you submit a ticket to the form SG, actually my cloud operation team that's handling and helping you with the problem. Yeah. So this is just a few of them. Yep.
all right, thanks, Teck Guan.
Thank you.
Then more or less bring us to the end of our seminar today. I think you have been a really very participative audience. I think sending a lot of questions and some not so easy to answer ones. So thank you very much. So now we're going to proceed to lunch. So let me give you some little administrative instructions. So lunch will just be next door. So if you go out from this door and then you turn right, you will see some signs there. So you can go in lunch. Lunch. There will be a assigned table. I believe some of my colleagues may have informed some of you already. If not, then we have colleagues outside. Then will tell you what table that you are assigned to. Okay. But anyways, on the table, there will be your name tags. So you can also go look for your own names, where your seat is assigned. Okay. Okay. So I believe lunch is ready. Once you sit down, we can start serving lunch very soon. Okay, so once again, thank you very much. Thank you for coming for our seminar, and please enjoy your lunch.